Một thịt lộn, một thịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, ớt xào đây.
Welcome to episode 10, season 1 of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. This is going to be the final episode of season 1. I'm going to take a break for a little bit and then I'll be right back pretty shortly with season 2. I'm going to have some awesome guests lined up, many of them listener suggested, and if you do have any suggestions for guests, let me know. But today we have an extra special crossover podcast episode. So I have with me today the hosts of Sexy Meat Talks, which is another Saigon podcast. I have with me Josh and Mark, and we're going to talk to them about their background in Saigon, how they've ended up here. We're going to talk about their careers here in Saigon. We're going to talk as well about their podcast, Sexy Meat Talks, which if you haven't checked it out, make sure you have a listen. And we're overall generally going to have a bit of a banter. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolutely, thank you.
So Mark here is the founder of Quan U'u and Beer Craft, which are two of my favourite places to go in Saigon for sure. And so tell me a bit about your background. Where are you from? How did you end up in Saigon?
Okay, I'm from Chicago, actually a small northwest suburb of Chicago, but Chicago's easier to say because everyone knows where that is. What brought me out to Vietnam, I guess originally is a childhood friend of mine was out here doing business for years, and I always kept in touch with him. And he brought a friend of his back to Chicago in 2009, and that's my business partner, Tim Scott. He was just visiting home, and Tim was coming to town because he wanted to go to Lollapalooza. He had, living in Vietnam, he couldn't get his share of music. And that was my original connection to Vietnam. And how it worked was I met Tim, and Jake was in town, and we went to Lollapalooza and barbecued together, and no idea I'd ever go to Vietnam, even on a vacation at that point. But about a year later, my friend Jake, through Skype, convinced me, get over here, you'll love it, check it out. So I'm like, it was expensive. I had a modest income back home, but I took me a little while to save up for it and make the trip. And it was 2010, and I did love it. I went to Central Vietnam, Da Nang, Hue, Hoi An, and it was just a 2-week vacation. And I also met Tim. Still no plans to move out here. It was just, I fell in love with the country though. Back in the States, and I think all my friends are like, you haven't stopped talking about Vietnam. What is wrong with you? I'm like, you just have to experience it, the energy, the vibe, the feel. And it was, I still didn't know when I was going to go back to Vietnam or if I ever would. But then my buddy Jake, again, got me out to Vietnam. He was getting married, and I'm like, I got to be at your wedding, dude. So came out for 2 weeks, all in Saigon that time. I stayed at my buddy Jake's house, and for his wedding, this is the moment when I first started thinking about moving out here. He was having a dinner on the Thursday night before his wedding on the weekend, because he had 10 family members, mom, dad, aunties, cousins, nieces, nephews, I don't know, all kinds of family in town. And he was just saying to me, oh crap, I gotta cook this big meal, and I don't know how to cook, and the only thing I can think of is I'll order delivery and have it on my rooftop. And I'm like, let me cater your party as a wedding gift. And I did. And so I went out I found Yerson Market, because that's where I could get a grill. He didn't have anything. So I bought him a grill, and found the Co-op Mart. I was just on vacation for a wedding, and really, that was, I made ribs, I made barbecue sauce, I made all the stuff that eventually would become our barbecue menu at Quan U'u. And Tim Scott, good friends with my friend Jake, was on the roof that day, and it was Thanksgiving night 2012. So it was a U.S. holiday, and it was Jake's family, who I grew up with, were all there, and it was like Happy Thanksgiving, and Tim's eating the ribs, and he sometime after the meal, he's like, what do you think about moving out here and opening a barbecue restaurant with me? And I was just like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. And he said, think about it. He goes, it's you know, at the time he said it's pretty easy to open a small business here. We could do it, you know. And I think about 2 weeks after getting home, I already had my house for sale and was tearing down my life to move out here. A year after that conversation, I landed in Saigon, and a week before I got here, Tim had called me and said, we found a location. That's the Woven Kit store in District 1. And 3 months after I got here, the restaurant was open. So I didn't come here looking for work. Work brought me here. And yeah, I always wanted to own my own restaurant, and now I got 9 of them. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I always find it so interesting because as expats, we all kind of share some commonality in our kind of genesis stories, our background stories, right? Like for a lot of them are fortuitous, you know, whether it's someone didn't do their paperwork or whether someone's wedding needs catered or whatnot. And there also is that thing about Vietnam having that pool that you were talking about. Like we were similar. My wife and I came for a holiday for like 2 weeks, travelled the length of the country, just fell in love with it. And when we went back we lived in Wellington in New Zealand. We didn't know of any Vietnamese food anywhere in Wellington, right? But when we came back, we were craving it. We didn't realise there was an Asian supermarket across the road from us with everything that we wanted. We went and bought all the rice paper rolls. We started making our own food. We found like 5 Vietnamese restaurants that were just within walking distance from our place that we didn't know that were there. And we just spent that whole weekend back in Wellington, like eating Vietnamese food. I remember as well, we found a restaurant with ba ba ba. Guess how much a can of ba 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 was in New Zealand?
Guessing $10 US or something?
Just about that, yeah.
I was going to lowball it. I was going to say 5.
It was 9 New Zealand dollars, which I think it's maybe $7 US, something like that. And we were just like, what's it, 50 cents here? But it's something about Vietnam where you come here and then you're like, we're still here years later.
Yeah, that was also something I noticed on that first vacation. I didn't, sitting at a restaurant by the ocean in Da Nang somewhere and eating prawns and crab and all this incredible seafood with crates of beer, and it's like we get the bill, it's like, okay, $7 each, and it's like, oh my god. I still get sticker shock when I go back to Chicago and buy a round of drinks for my friends, and it's like, where'd all my money go?
Yeah, I know. I remember we did Bia Hoi up in Hanoi when we were on our first vacation here. Similar thing, like so much beer, so much food. Got the bill and it was something similar, like $5 a head or something like that. And it's like, this is crazy because in New Zealand, like, it's ridiculously expensive.
It'd be so hard to find that in the States. Yeah, just like what Mark's saying. There was one of my first little areas that I hung out when I was on actually Nguyen Mackay. There's the 18A, the alley where so many teachers and expats live. There's a lot of alleys around there where you can kind of duck in and sit down and get reasonably good food and inexpensive beer, and just what you guys are saying, spend a better part of an evening and walk out of there paying less than $200,000, which is less than $8.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you got here, what were your intentions? And you said you were only going to stay for 2 or 3 months?
Well, I figured that I would come out here and try to start the teaching process. I always had that in mind. Previous to that, I was not the most adventurous person. And I'd gone a few places before and kind of sort of mentally bottomed out and went back. I moved around quite a lot, or at least for a person with my proclivities, it felt like a lot. And so I just had it in my head that, like, yeah, I'll be out there 3-4 months, I'll probably get tired of it or something. But again, day 2 or 3 or somewhere early on, I just had a moment with bun cha, and I was like, you just can't get this food back in the States. That I'm sure I could find it now, but it was the food and the ease of life quickly got its hooks in me. And then I think a little bit after that, just realizing how friendly and open most Vietnamese people are, that certainly didn't hurt.
Did you see there was something just yesterday about how Saigon's been rated one of the top 10 places in the world to live for expats?
I didn't see
massive study by HSBC, yeah. And one of the things was the friendliness and the openness of the people, and I think sometimes I forget just how friendly Vietnamese people are without even being able to speak the language. And that's my question right for you guys, and I ask everyone this: how's your Vietnamese?
Chup chup.
Chup chup.
Yeah.
Non-existent. Actually, I have my wonderful wife. she's Vietnamese, and it's made me even lazier about learning a second language, because a lot of times it's just I look at her and she's like, I got it, okay.
I thought that was how you learned Vietnamese, is because if you have a Vietnamese wife or partner, then you can talk to them.
Perfect English, probably better English than mine.
No. And so have you learned more than chup 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 chup? I think if you've listened before, means like a little Vietnamese.
Em học tiếng Việt. I've studied Vietnamese. My intonation's kind of crap, but I have a decent vocabulary, and so if I only just used it more, if I practiced what I preach in the classroom, if I just treated, I'm typical or like a plumber doesn't want to do plumbing in their own house. I theoretically should be able to learn this language because I know how to do it. I know how to acquire language, but I'm an adult male lazy person.
Yeah, I started out, I get Rosetta Stone, and so I know my numbers and my colors. That's about it, And then being in the food business, our funny names for beers, I know how to insult people and say slang things because of that. And I also, I can get in a cab and tell them anywhere in the city how to get there. I know the street names, or can almost say them close enough that they understand me. So that's about my extent of how much I've learned. And really the amount of English that the younger generation of Vietnamese are speaking. So much of our staff, I just walk up to them and I take it for granted that they know English, and most of them do. And it's that's also made it a little harder for me to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, and I mean I talk about it with friends as well. It's so difficult in Saigon. It's so easy to be lazy because so many people speak English. I think if you were stationed somewhere out in the country or somewhere else where English isn't as prevalent, you'd force yourself to learn it more, but we're just so lucky here, and it makes us all lazy, right?
And also for me, being American and what I do is what people are buying from me. They're coming and having American cuisine and American craft beer. So that's what they expect from me.
But so you mentioned the names of your beer, and you won't be able to see this because we're on a podcast. Mark pointed to my t-shirt. So I'm wearing a t-shirt, coincidentally, that is one of the beer craft beers. Which, do you want to pronounce it?
So Salmachan is roughly translated ugly but vain. And we have several, probably 10 beers with these funny Vietnamese names. And our Vietnamese customers love it. And they think it's so funny that you call a beer a slang insult, And we have Zabaco, which is you fucking liar, Koida Ra means let's get naked.
Well, the one that made me laugh was it didn't make me laugh. Sorry, the one that educated me was Chit Bit Lin.
Yeah.
Because my Vietnamese friend had told me this phrase, and her translation to English was it means if I die I will know, and I didn't really understand what she meant by that. But she's like, yeah, it's a Vietnamese phrase. It means if I die I will know. And I was like, okay, fine. And it wasn't until I went to Beer Craft. Got your beer, and it said Chip Bit Lin, but it's translated as fuck the vinyl.
Yeah.
I was like, of course, that's what she was trying to say.
But I think what it really means, if I know that I'm dead.
Yeah.
But when it's turned around, yeah. So we came up with rough translations, like Bit Chet Lean doesn't mean fucked if I know exactly.
Oh, okay.
But it's the same meaning.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And it's a saying, so that's where we.
It's the direct translation means if I die I will
Dun
know.
Chuk Tao is another beer, is our pale ale, and Dun Chuk Tao is like don't fuck with me.
I like wearing this t-shirt, but I also don't because I get such funny looks wearing it. And I walked into the doctor's surgery one morning, and I was half asleep, and this girl just stared at my t-shirt, and she was like that, and I was like, why is she staring at me? And then I looked, and I was like, oh, I'm wearing the...
It's also because it's a foreigner wearing it. It's like they know that that's a funny thing to put on a shirt,
So after that, I try not to wear it if I'm going somewhere formal, like the doctors or somewhere like that. I try to just wear it if I'm going out for a beer.
That's another thing I love about Vietnam is, you can have fun with stuff like that. You know, our customers, our Vietnamese customers, love that we're playful in the restaurant. And it makes them, so that's another fun part of Vietnam.
Well, I talked about this with somebody, I think it was Joe Wanza on the podcast. And one thing that I think is amazing when you go to these bars, like these craft beer places or Western places, I'm using quotation marks, it is mostly Vietnamese people that are there. Would you think that you're servicing more Vietnamese people than Westerners?
And that goes back to, my partner, Tim Scott. He, when we opened, I was so happy. I was so proud of, I'm going to make chicken wings like this, and I want to show people all this American food. But he's like, we're not opening in an expat place. We're opening, American barbecue for Vietnamese.
So that was conscious from the beginning.
And I didn't understand what he meant by. He's like, we're going to get expats. We're Western food, but we want to present it in a restaurant that is for the Vietnamese. And I learned after moving here and seeing expat bars, and nothing's wrong with those kind of places, but they're exactly that. An example is like some of the girly bars over on the beginning of Pasteur Street. There's nothing wrong with running a business like that. I mean, they get a lot of good-looking young Vietnamese ladies, and a bunch of old expats like to hang around and drink there, and it can be a fun place. But Tim was telling me, do you think a Vietnamese family feels comfortable with a bunch of expats oogling young ladies? It's not really what we wanted to do, and we did. And boy, was he right, because when we started getting busy, a Vietnamese couple would come in, and they'd like the experience, and then we'd see them the next weekend with grandma, mom, dad, 4 kids, a group of 12, and then that's what we wanted all along. And I would say because of that, our style of service, it is almost all of our restaurants as a whole collectively 75 to 80% Vietnamese on any given night.
And economically, right, thinking about it, like how many expats are there? I think I looked up this week, like 60,000 expats.
Okay, I wasn't sure what that number was, but that's about right.
It's about around that. And then you got 10 million people that live here. So I mean, if you're going to cater to 60,000 people,
yeah, it makes sense.
You're not gonna have 9 restaurants. You're not going to expand, and you're pretty difficult to be successful. So you really do have to cater.
Yeah, we're at 8 restaurants and a beer truck, but we are opening our 9th restaurant next month.
Nice. Where's that going to be?
We already have the location, so I can say we have 9 restaurants. It's in Bintan district, and there's the area kind of over by City Garden.
Is it near like Kwai and Bodhi?
It's like a lot of Japanese places are back
there. That's like my favorite new spot now.
So we're going to have a little beer craft,
awesome.
And we're going to do an all Japanese menu for beer craft at that location. So.
Yeah, I went there. We went there just like 2 weeks ago. A place called Murteki, and just randomly found it, and it was so good. I
found a couple places back in there that are just fun. I can't remember the name of the place I went with Tim, and they had you grilled your food right on your table. There's a little ash pit, and then like about 15-20 minutes into our we're having beers and grilling up food. Boom! These girls come out, and they're standing on top of the bathroom. There was a ledge and 2 platforms going up in the air, and they're girls in miniskirts dancing to Japanese music, and they danced for about 5 minutes. And I was like, "Well, that was cool. What the hell is that?" And every hour on the hour, they did it. We were there for a couple hours. We're like, "I like this place. Very Japanese."
I'm glad you're opening in that area, because that's a cool little spot. Because have you been to like there's Birdie? And then
we're right by Birdie.
You're by Birdie, and then there's Kwai.
I think they're across the street from us. We're on a corner right down there.
Yeah, that spot there, like I'd never been there until like maybe a few months ago, and then now I go back quite often.
All kinds of nice shops. I think someone tipped, I don't know exactly who told us about the location, but we went over and looked at it, and we had signed the contract the very next morning. It was like, we want this. This is a cool spot, man. So we're excited about it.
So when you first got here, Josh, what was the state of craft beer or the food like the kind of Western food industry, I guess?
I think possibly Platinum existed. I forget their chronology, but there was Pasteur Street had opened. I may be way off in this, but I want to say December. Mark, do you know that?
Right at the end of the year, I think.
2013?
I think in January of 2014.
Okay, so
I came in April.
January of 2015.
Yeah, I think it was 2015. I came in April 2015 for a holiday, and I remember coming and having a Jasmine IPA. And so we lived in Wellington, which is like the craft beer capital of the Pacific. Like craft beer in Wellington, New Zealand is unbelievable. So I remember coming and being like, a Jasmine IPA, this is... And Misha served us. I've got a picture. I was going through pictures like 2 or 3 years later of our trip to Vietnam, and in the background is Misha behind the bar serving our beers. I sent it to him. It's crazy. I'd never met him.
he was there very early on.
Yeah,
he was walking around like a
he was there. He was one of their first customers, and I think he told his story to you.
Yeah.
And your listeners heard it in the last podcast. But I can tell you accurately how the craft beer scene unfolded. Josh is right. Platinum was here when we opened our restaurant in March of 2014. From March until the end of the year, in order, we were brewing in our restaurant, but it wasn't called Bia Craft yet. It was just Quan Oot Oot IPA, and we had a couple beers available. And Platinum, sometime around May or June, were the first ones in kegs that you could get your hands on. And then there was Fuzzy Logic. They were brewing very small batches, but Kyle and Max were brewing Fuzzy Logic in 2014. They were in that alley with kegs of beer from time to time was how they got their start. And then by the end of the year, Pasteur Street opened their tasting room. And then by the middle of 2015, we opened the little beer craft in Tao Dien. And opening night, we had 2 Pasteur Streets, 2 Platinums, 2 Beer Craft beers, and we named the place Beer Craft, and Fuzzy Logic on tap. That was all the beer in the country at that time. So from 2015 to 2016, in the month of August, it went from 6 beers available in the country to we had 14 beers on tap. And we couldn't put all of them on. We were rotating different beers, and then we just kept growing the number of taps. Now, the Beer Craft at Lego Cat has 50 taps, and we put only 2 or 3 of each brewery's beers on. We can't put them all, or there's over 150 beers to choose from now in this country. So
it's so exciting. And if you've heard before I talk about craft beer, I do love it. And Wellington was an exciting time because I think what I see now is Saigon is going through what Wellington went through like 5-10 years ago, because the craft beer industry kind of comes up behind America, right? Like that's the trailblazer, and then all the industries kind of follow behind. And so if you heard the story with Misha, you heard I got burned on investing in the craft beer.
Yeah, I did hear that a bit.
And so, but it was so cool at the time just seeing all these craft beers explode, and so good. And then coming here again on a holiday just in 2015.
If you want to give me some cash, I'll make a beer craft beer for you.
I've lost it all. It's all gone. So what were you drinking when you first got here, Josh?
I did the light wallet. I did a lot of Xerox and Tigers and just your standard cheaper beers. I'm not going to disparage any of them. I certainly got my enjoyment. Although certain ones, a few of those caused bigger headaches than others, so I shy away from a couple.
Is that the one in the green bottle?
Yeah. We'll say that.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
But early on, I was lucky enough to meet Max and Colin at Fuzzy Logic. So they used to. This was probably in 2016, not 15, but 2016. Not that I met him, but like I used to be one of a few friends they'd call and be like, hey, we got a keg delivery, free beer if you help us unpack 300 kegs or something. And so, that very well might have been 2017. I haven't thought about that in a while. But early on, it was Platinum. I've always loved microbrews since I could drink them, and a little bit before I legally could do that. But,
well, it's 21 in America, so that doesn't
yeah,
count.
so
You
should
have 3 years of legal experience before then. What was the craft beer scene like in Connecticut?
As I remember, there was New England Brewing, which was blowing up. New England in general has just been exploding with craft beer. But New Haven, Connecticut had some great bars that you could go to and see live music, drink good craft beers. The Ginger Man, which is, I think that's in Stanford, has they have like a 50 tap setup. They've also, I'm pretty sure their first location was in New York City, but there was places you could go.
So who's ready for a beer now?
Yeah.
Should we order some?
Yeah, we could.
Some couple cans.
Yeah, well, I've seen them marketing all around town, and that's really made me want to buy their beer. Which, if you live in Saigon, you'll have seen the latest beer craft marketing. I've seen you naked more times than I'd like to count.
Yeah, that it sells a lot of beer, believe it or not.
So how did that come about?
We've always had a lot of fun, like our funny names, and we had done some other marketing. It was basically making fun of the Vietjet. They've stepped on their own a few times. The first time was the first year we were open. Vietjet, they just kind of did a media scam. What they did was they photoed a lot of really attractive Vietnamese women in bikinis, bumping their butts together, and really suggestive photos, and a lot more skin than the government likes. So what they did is they released the photos on one of the models' personal Facebook page, and when the government tried to find them for these photos, because they got millions of views and Vietnamese kids everywhere were like, oh yeah, and they said, oh, a marketing company took those pictures, and we didn't want to post them. They were leaked on Facebook. That's the model. They still find them, and shame on you. Tim, who is really quick on this stuff, he's like, we got to rip on him for it. So we sent our marketing guy down to Bui Vin, which for your listeners, that's the party street in Saigon. There's always trouble on that street, depending on what you're looking for. But we were looking for male models, so we went down and we asked a bunch of people from all over the world. There was an English guy, a Japanese guy, and we said, all the free beer and bacon you want if you come down to our restaurant, and and they're like, what do you want us to do? We're gonna put you in Borat mankinis, and we're gonna copy the photos of Vietjet. So that meant, a whole lot of nudity, except for a small Borat mankini. There was spillage, there was problems, but it worked. It did exactly what we wanted to. We leaked the photos on a Facebook page, and it went viral. Got several thousand hits, and it was yanked down because we had to blur the photos because of the spillage, and then the photo went back up, and it was in the Saigoneer and Word magazine. They all picked it up and ran with it, and we got a lot of funny press for it. A few people were a little offended, but it mostly was just for fun. And then fast forward to last year, the under 23 football team, Vietnamese won the cup. They were the number one team in all of Asia, and Vietnamese are very, very proud of their football. And Vietjet did it again. They put bikini models with a big hilarious crown on this lady, and she's hugging one of the footballers in the plane while they're flying back from their win in China. And 24 hours later, they had pictures of me in the same getup, and I'm hugging our general manager of our restaurants, and he's looking exactly like the soccer player, and it went viral. There was an online vote, the model against me, and I won by 88%, so...
Send me these links and I'll put them in the show notes so people can see them.
Some of them have been...
If they've not been taken down.
Taken down, yeah. They were one of them was in the newspaper when the under 23 football team won, and it was pulled. I think Vietjet paid them to take it down because we were stealing their thunder a little bit. And
so to explain the latest marketing campaign, I think we should order beers and see if they can make it here before the end of the recording. Okay. Should we do it?
Sure. I'd like to order a 6-pack of beer.
6 cans of beer?
Yes.
Do you want to deliver to your address?
Yes, please. Could we get 3 cham pan cham?
3 cham pan cham.
and 3 Samachan?
New Dun Chuk Tao.
And 3 Dung Chuk Tao.
Yeah. So, okay, so give us 15 minutes. We get a range order and contact you shortly, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. Bye.
So we've just ordered some beers from the Nguyen beer craft. How is the customer service there?
Good.
Well, it's another example of us not speaking Vietnamese and able to order 6 beers from our. Yeah, I love that about our Vietnamese staff. They're excellent.
Oh, I'm getting a little treat here.
So Biscuit's been with us as
Biscuit.
always, sleeping.
Biscuit, we're
She's
getting down.
woken up now and she's giving Josh some love. So we've ordered some beers from Beer Craft. They should be here hopefully in 15-20 minutes. We'll continue on. We're getting parched talking about beer so much. Both of you have now been here for nearly 6 years, out with the food and beverage industry, which obviously has just changed massively. What are the biggest changes that you've seen in Saigon?
Quite a bit. When we moved here and we opened, there was a couple of places that really I don't know how I want to say, kind of hit another level for Vietnam. What I mean by that is, when I got here 5 years ago, it was still a lot of the little steel tables, the little red chairs, a lot of they'd been the same for 20 or 30 years without much change. But there was just starting to be when I visit an example of when I visited in 2010. My business partner Tim Scott took me to Black Cat. That was the best burger in the city, and there wasn't much other choices, and there was a place that's not there. Neither one of these are still here. El Gato was a Mexican place, but what I'm talking about though is Pizza 4P was open when I moved here, and that everyone told me, you got to go there. That's another level. They make their own cheese and they do all this wonderful stuff, and then the Urban Kitchen and I'm just trying to think of Relish and Sons opened and Pastor Street opened and we opened, and right around that 2014, 2015 period, 10 or 15 really new and modern establishments opened. And the thing that's changed the most from then till this year, it's not quite as easy to do as it was 5 years ago. And what I mean by that is, if you want to keep up with the quality of the restaurants that are open, you've got to put a little more than. We got our first restaurant open. An example, I think it was well under $50,000 invested from all the original partners, and I know that our last couple of restaurants, it was more than 3 times that price to open an establishment. But it was also, we didn't have a choice when we did that first one. I think it would be very difficult for someone to open a nice quality restaurant. Keeping it under $50,000 invested. It's just, that's how much things have changed. The quality,
what price has increased?
Mostly the rents.
I was going to say, is that the rent?
I think in the city center, it's starting to get hard to find anything under $10,000 a month, and a lot of places were able to get under $2,000 a month a few years back, and the prices just keep going up. The price of land, that's skyrocketing. But even labor Vietnamese are, the labor is, compared to Western standards, still very low, but it as Vietnam develops, that's creeping up with it, so I would say the opportunity is still here for people from abroad starting a small business here, but it's growing fast.
And you can see it's changing like that, like the development. I was talking about that with Susan Lee. I don't know if you know Susan. And we're talking about almost at a little sweet spot right now of it's developing, and there's the things that you need to get to open a business, and it's cheap enough, and there's opportunities enough, you can get in here, but that's going to change. It's changing quickly, right?
Yeah, big time. We're one of the companies changing it. We just opened our beer truck. That's something new for Vietnam. We didn't even know it was possible. We wanted to do it for a long time. But, my partner Tim saw the Pizza 365 truck. We're like, hey, they're doing it here. Where did they get that truck? And we started looking into it, and then we're friends with Masuke, the founder and owner of Pizza 4P, and he told us he's got a truck and he's got it licensed. So then we found out, well, you can do this now, and we got a licensed beer truck, and right now it's parked at the old Beercraft because we're remodeling 90 Santui in District 2. That's another thing that that's been going crazy in the States, but that's starting to happen here. And we like very much being one of the first with a truck because there's going to be a flood of them now. There'll be a Pepsi truck, a Coke truck. We have a beer truck before Budweiser and Heineken and Tiger, so that's pretty badass.
I guess it's something that we yeah, it's true.
They're going to see it and they're going to be like, oh, we're going to have a truck.
Well, I guess food trucks are so popular in the US, right? And it's something that's not done here. And I hadn't even really thought about it being done here, but that could be the next big thing here, right? Instead of more physical restaurants, the rents are going up, like you're saying. Maybe that'll be the next thing we'll see in Saigon is more of the food truck scene. Yeah,
and we're already starting to see a lot of the trends that have happened in the U.S. as it grows here. Things like I don't know if you've heard of a dark kitchen. Dark kitchen is a concept that you launch a concept and you don't even have a location. So an example of it exactly so you can understand it better is Madhouse is a restaurant in District 2. For delivery only, they have a Mad Burger. There's no location. You can't order a Mad Burger at Madhouse restaurant. It's just a way to increase revenue is restaurants will start a second concept and grow it. And if in delivery only and if you grow it and you prove the concept, then you can find a location because you already got the revenue and boom.
Well, a previous episode was with Thum Le. I don't know if you know how she started Saigonita. Have you heard of Saigonita? Which is a closed door restaurant, so she does it from her home and invites people in, and it's not open all the time. It's kind of like I don't know if it's invite only, but it's only infrequently, and it's a fusion of Mexican and Vietnamese food.
Cool.
So she's from Texas, Vietnamese parents that left Vietnam, settled in Texas, and she's come back here, so she's influenced by the Mexican food and the Vietnamese food, and we were just talking about how they kind of complement each other. And instead of her starting out with like a bricks and mortar restaurant, she started off with at home. And she said, in the beginning, she's like, I didn't even think somebody would pay me for my food, so it was kind of like, I'll see what happens. And I think the first one she did was just 20 people, and then it grew and then it grew. And
wow.
That's great.
That's interesting. But those kind of things like food trucks and dark kitchens, with expats doing business here, they're bringing all that stuff. And I think we'll be launching some new concepts in a very similar way.
The trailblazers, really, right?
We like to be the first, and I'll say that it never gets old, and we don't want to be the first to suck. That's not what I mean. But it's what's fun about doing business here in Vietnam. There's a lot of things that are untouched still, and you can have a go at them.
And what about for you, Josh? What's the biggest changes you've noticed?
Mark pretty much pinpointed what I would say. The skyline. Where I live in District 2 in Tao Dien, I can see the Landmark 81 tower, but just 2 years ago that wasn't there at all, and 3 years ago, a year before that, the buildings surrounding it were largely not there, mostly not there. Tu Tiem by the tunnel, that was a gravel road. The highway in between Tren now, in between the two highways, that was gravel. I think they were probably just ripping it up at the time. I'm sure it was paved at some point before that, but it was they widened just the rapidity with which things have progressed. But I would also say the I don't know. I have not done research, but I would say cars, presence of cars when I first came here. Just a lot less cars, and now just I believe that the taxation on importing vehicles has been relaxed or maybe nullified. I'm not positive.
I think that's what I got told before. There was 100% tax on importing a car, which meant there was almost no cars here. And I think it was 3 or 5 years ago they just took it away, and now it's just
when I got here, Josh, that exact thing was just happening. I met my wife the first month I was here. Took me a while to get smart enough to ask her out and start dating her, but I remember her telling me when I first met her in the first couple of dates and we were talking, she's like, they first relaxed the laws on the cars, the taxes on the cars. It was the ASEAN group that, these 6 nations don't pay any taxes, so cars coming from Japan and all that were all included. And what she told me back then, she's like, if you see a Toyota Corolla that's 10 years old, they're going to keep driving it because they paid $100,000 to get that car in this country. There is no cheap car. I mean, if you had any car, you had a lot of money, and now you can buy cars for under $20,000, and it's reasonable for middle class people. And now you see the long lines of cars at rush hour, and
you also see a lot of nice cars as well.
Oh yeah,
like really nice cars. I was blown away. I went to Cambodia to Phnom Penh one time, and I couldn't believe the nice cars that were driving down the street. I was like, I thought this was like one of the poorest countries in the world, which it is.
I think it is, yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, how are the Aston Martins driving down the street? And
the people that do have money have a mountain of it.
Exactly, and that's a problem worldwide. It's inequality, right? Yeah. I think the crazy thing about this time right now in Saigon, and what's really exciting, is for us being from the West, right? So where we're from, the infrastructure was all built 100 years ago, 50 years ago, subway systems, railway lines, we didn't see any of that, it was all there, the streets were there, the street lights were all there, and then now we're living at a time where, it's developing and we're seeing that, the subway system is literally being built right now, I've seen the subway bridge being connected over the river, that's something that would have, our forefathers would have seen the New York subway system or the London Underground, or they'd have seen that being built, we're seeing that now. And I just think it's just really exciting time because not many people will get to live through that change. Just last week, somebody showed me a picture of the ferry. I didn't even know there used to be a ferry that went across the Saigon River between D2 and D1, and it's filled with motorbikes. So all the motorbikes would pile on the ferry goes across, they pile off, and then when did the tunnel get built? 3, 4, 5 years ago? Not very long ago.
I think it was 5 or 6 maybe.
No, it was a little more than that. I drove on the tunnel in 2012 when I was in town for my buddy's wedding, and it had just opened. He drove me through it on the back of his motorbike to show me. I'm like, oh, this is cool. When did this? He goes, oh, you used to have to go all the way around. He goes, now you can just take the tunnel. There was the Saigon Bridge, the big one going over to District 2. That was the first big bridge that went up. It was a smaller bridge that, the ships needed to pass by, so for a lot of years it was ferries,
And so, that's what I think is we're at a kind of snapshot in time here, because if you go to Kuala Lumpur or any other Bangkok, they're more developed, right? But we're here right now.
It's really cool, actually. Do you know Chris Bianis? He's been a regular customer of ours. He's a craft beer lover, and he's an artist. He's an excellent artist, too. He has a whole line of paintings that are these, if me or you see him, we'd know that's Saigon the time that I was there, because it's half-built bridges with green construction fence. It's impressionist, so it's a really cool. I want to get my hands on some of his paintings, but that might be a good podcast for him. He's a guy that's in District 7. He's an incredible artist, and he captured that whole thing you're just talking about, cool, the bridges going up, and it is a cool.
That would be interesting. Put me in touch with him.
Yeah, but it's also a cool thing that we're witnessing right now. I agree with you.
So talking about art, what about the artwork at Be a Craft? Because that's been a bit controversial, has it not? I think I saw a little bit of murmurings online about it.
Well, there was... We like I said, we've always liked to be a little edgy and have fun. Mostly that's our intention. It's not to start a controversy. We like to have fun, and then sometimes if we push it too far. And that one we did, but it wasn't intentional. They painted a mural at this beer craft, and it was Tim talked to an artist, and he said, all the other guys have the mock brewery, the grain going in, this is the hops in the water, and almost every tasting room, even around the U.S., that's a very common thing to put up. So he thought, wouldn't it be fun if the man is the brewery and what he's... And it was a very crazy, kind of surrealist painting of this man turning himself, the man himself as a brewery, and the drink was coming out, and on the last wall, the end of the mural, there's these two really weird looking ladies that are barely covered at all. It's very cartoony, and in the crotch of the one lady, it was like dripping with like, and and we had a few comments, and we didn't tell the artist to go that far. He just did it, and then we're like, oh, okay. So we just kind of respected the artist's work, as it was a little more graphic than we thought it was going to be. But and a couple of people commented, mostly expats who that's looked down on in the West, and that's very gratuitous and it's not nice and whatever. And after a couple comments, we were like, yeah, and then our staff, which our marketing staff took a picture of a beer with some foam on the top of it right underneath that section of the mural, and it looked like, because what was dripping looked like it was filling the glass. And that went up on our Facebook page. And then some good friends of ours said, hey guys, we love your edginess, and this is too far, man. I wouldn't want my kid to see that, and you got to keep it real. And we agreed, and so much so that all the people that had talked to us, we contacted them and said, hey, we just painted over the end of the mural. We still kept the whole artwork, just took away that little, painted that wall gray and said, thanks, But that was exactly, we like to be irreverent, but respectfully irreverent, poke fun, make fun of the status quo, and not make fun of somebody or offend someone. So that's,
and at the end of the day,
it's easy to cross that line nowadays, when you have the right intentions, but
I think the main thing in that is how you react, right? I don't think it's what you actually do; it's how you react.
Sure.
And if you take it well, as long as you're respectful in your answer, you don't need to react and say, "Okay, we're going to take it down." But as long as you're respectful in your answer,
no. And we didn't take it down the first couple of times someone had a problem with it. We just say that was the artist. We told them what we wanted, and that's what the artist did, and we were just respecting the artist.
Yeah.
But then when our staff did that, and we didn't ask him to, but he's been working with us, and he knows, he likes to have fun with stuff. Like, hey, Mark, take off all your clothes. What are we doing? Or we're going to put you in a pool with beer can underwear, and we're going to sell cans of beer. And I'm like, okay.
I don't think we fully explained that.
Okay,
I don't think so. That when I said about I want to order some beer, what happened
for
with that?
For the listeners, I'll go back to finishing that story. We did get off track, I think, when we ordered the beers.
That's
so we did I talked about the Vietjet, scandals that we poked fun of, and we got a lot of laughs and a lot of coverage. So then it was just our marketing guy's choice. He's like, hey, can you come over and do the photo shoot? We're going to do it at Tim's house. And I'm like, oh, why don't we do it in the restaurant? He's like, Tim didn't want to do it in the restaurant. He doesn't want to offend anyone. I'm like, okay, well, I'll see you over there. What time? Come over here this time. And it was like 6 p.m. on a weeknight, and there's a black screen and the lighting and a baby pool and a little rubber ducky, and I'm, okay, what are we doing? He's like, take off your clothes.
You didn't know this beforehand?
No. I've been in lots of photo shoots and commercials and TV shows. I'm used to this. As part of my routine is, okay, we're doing some more marketing, and I'm the barbecue guy of the company, so I expect it. I didn't expect to sell cans of beer for Beercraft naked in a pool with beer cans barely covering anything, but it was pretty funny though, because we have some really KPIs that are really hard to hit, and one of them is increasing the volume of beer we sell this year. And can sales, everything. We look at everything and how do we boost it. And our marketing guy thought that me in a pool, floating in a little baby pool in a pool with beer can underwear would sell cans of beer. I went along with it. I didn't know they were going to put up 2-meter murals of me in front of all 8 restaurants, but they did, and you can see it from across the river. And some of my coworkers are like, "Dude, man, it's a little much." I'm like, but I think we put those signs up on a Thursday, and they're also on every table on a little topper and posters on every wall. I mean, it was really overdone, and our beer sales went. I don't know the exact number, but if we were selling 30 cans of beer at all locations on that Thursday, they went on the tables that Thursday night, that Friday, and that Saturday, and that Sunday right after it, because it was buy 5 cans, get 1 free promotion. Our can sales went up to like 90 cans of beer. It like more than tripled for that first weekend. And I'm like, okay, if the marketing guy asks, I just have to believe he knows what he's doing. But yeah, my wife was a little shocked on that one. She's like, "Why did you do that?" And I'm like, "They asked me to. It's my job." So
it's funny the way you're describing it though, because when you go into the studio or whatever, you just don't picture like 2-meter banners everywhere, table toppers, like this picture being everywhere. Like I'm just going in doing some marketing, like.
Well, and then it's on our Facebook page, which my family and friends back home are like. It's funny, I visited in May, and that promotion was already out, and buddy Bob that I worked with at the car dealership for years, all the marketing put together, he's like, "What are you going to do next?" He's like, "You're like the freaking Chris Farley of Vietnam now." I don't know. He goes, "I just crack up sometimes when I see your guys' next video or next shooting." It's like, I don't know. It actually makes it quite fun, to be honest. And believe it or not, I seem to have a lot of our Vietnamese female staff want to rub my belly now. So
something good came of it then. I'm joking.
My wife wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, they think it's funny.
Yeah. So let's talk about your podcast then. So we haven't even got to your podcast. So tell me, how did you guys meet and how did the podcast come about? Let's hear from Josh.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So we first met in around February, January last year, and like Mark was saying earlier, we played just started playing darts, and then you asked, were you invited?
We were. No, I asked to join. We ended up on the same dart team at the Fat Shaggy's bar, and which we would practice or play. But I'll let Josh finish.
I think we have a particularly childish sense of humor. The adult boys. We would drink good beer together and also crappy beer, and play darts and have a great time. And we have very similar senses of humor. We enjoy similar activities.
Finish each other's sentences.
Oh, there he goes again.
You guys.
Oh, it's like I just flutter in my heart every day. And we just, I think I had mentioned I wanted to do a podcast at some point, and Mark came. The way I remember it, I'm sure that's a little fuzzy, but Mark came in one night, and we were putting down some tigers and playing darts and having a good time, as we were do many nights a week. And he just kind of like half turned to me, he's like, "Sexy meat talks." And then it just like not. I remember distinctly he didn't say anything else. And I was just like, "Go on. What does this mean? Explain yourself a little bit." And he's like, "Let's do the talk thing. Let's do the podcast." And
the talk thing.
I don't think you said talk. That's what came out of my head.
When Josh told me about podcast, I'm like, "What is a podcast, anyways?" I'm like, and like, Josh is like, "I'm sure you've watched a podcast. Have you ever watched an episode of YouTube?" And then like, okay, and I figured out, I watch Hot Ones. I know what that is. And he goes, "But podcasts can be just audio. They can be video. They can be on many platforms." And then it's funny that our very first interview ended up being Fred. Fred has been doing podcasts for years, and I had been following him and watching his little clips, but he didn't have like a weekly. He just, whenever he had a big beer event or beer judging, or he was traveling all around the world with craft beer because that's how plugged into it he was. And then I realized, like, and that's when I said to him, I was like, well, what kind of podcast would I want to do? It's like I've quite enjoyed some of these TV shows talking about food and telling stories, and it took us a little while to develop what our podcast was going to be, but Josh penned a little header that's on our podcast page now, just saying an inside look at the food and beverage in Southeast Asia. We just wanted to tell the stories, like we're telling our stories now, but we have chefs, we have butchers, we have brewers, we have anything. And we also plan to do a podcast with you, coming on an episode of Sexy Meat Talks. So, and we'll be asking you a lot of things related to food and beverage, But that's really how it all developed, just out of the conversation, playing darts, and
some of the early energy too, which was that's when we knew what we were doing was something fun, because we were both kind of like cutting each other off to try and just get the ideas out. So we're like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. And Mark is a wonderfully creative person, and so it's really fun to just bounce ideas off of. And early on, it was just like a giddy kind of energy, which any good project should have. Some projects, may lack that. I'm not saying that makes a bad project, but like, I guess that's how you're doing something that you got passion for, because I was thinking about it all the time. And it did take us a while to get it going, but it was mostly, Mark was opening many different locations, and I do work full time. So it took a bit of time to get off the ground, but it was that I'm sure some of the early podcasts with this, I'm sure, felt very similar. Like, you're just excited to be just getting that thing on tape, getting those conversations out of people's mouths, and then you can just further the conversation, and that was exciting, because I want to do a podcast since I first got here, but I never met anyone who I thought I clicked well enough with to do. But I knew I didn't want to do it myself because I'm lazy.
Well,
it's been fun.
It's also been fun, like, figuring out how it all comes together. I mean, I was mentioning it to this guy Oliver, who's Oliver. What's his last name? Wood, or I forget.
Is it Woods?
It might be.
Oh yeah, Ollie from New Zealand. Yeah, Ollie. Yeah.
So we hired him at our barbecue restaurant. Well, at our whole company, to do our website, web utilization, and he's really good at that kind of stuff. That's his area of expertise. And I was at the Craft Beer Festival having the beers with him, and I'm like, yeah, me and Josh are starting this podcast. We've already recorded our first few interviews, and then he jumped in. He's like, oh, you do this. He goes, I've started a few podcasts, and he kind of like, then me and Josh are having beers with Ollie, and all of a sudden he's telling us taking a look at our Facebook, and he's setting it up for us, and he's like, can you make me an admin so I can jump in, and I'll make you guys famous.
Yeah.
He's that.
Well, he
good,
listens to this podcast, so
what's up, Oliver?
yeah, Ollie, why did you not offer to help make me famous?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Oliver, honestly, I'm astonished.
All right. So, but it's so, and that's also something cool about the expat scene here. And we're signal boosting each other. We both know Oliver. Oliver is offering to help with, and also we got Mervin, who's done photos for us and video.
Gotta thank him, yeah.
And there's other guys. We have a friend of ours, Jason, who's a regular at Shaggy's. He's an excellent artist and animator. He's doing our logos, and it's all like passion project, like as soon as, if we ever do get sponsors and get some money, we're going to be happy to reciprocate with these people that are, putting us on the map for the first time.
It's interesting. Have you joined any like podcast groups on Facebook to like help or like kind of become part? Have you done any of that? Like any resets like that?
Not groups, actually. Not. I'm sure they exist.
I know there's a few.
Shockingly bad with
part
social
of them.
media.
And one of the things that people often ask is, how do I monetize? How do I get a sponsor? And I'm like, you haven't even done your first episode yet. Like, I've never got into this to get a sponsor. Like, I'm just doing this as a passion project for a hobby. Like,
but I think for me, and I think also Josh is, it's fun to tell these stories to people. We're living here and experiencing it, and what better way to share it than with a podcast? And the more people we reach, the more I want to do it. It's like, and I don't mean having a commercial for. We have talked about my restaurants a lot, but we've also told our story of who we are, so the listeners know where we're coming from. But I do bill myself as a meat expert and specialist. That's what I do, and I'm a brewer of 20 years and a huge part of the craft beer scene. So I very much am connected directly. It's my life's work. It's my passion is the food and bev in the city, and Josh, the journalistic side. It just we seem to have all the parts to make what I think is really interesting and fun content, and we have a lot of access to the whole industry because of the people I know, my peers. The greatest chefs in the city. I know. I've had beers with them. We've shared stories and we share suppliers and we tell each other how to help each other out, and that's.
And a big thanks to you for reaching out to us. That was you messaged us and very quickly set this up, which was again, that's just an exemplary of the scene. That this is why I stayed out here. It was why so many people stay out here, and just so it's clear for the listeners, this is one side. We're going to do a part 2. I don't know if we set that up.
Not yet. So you can explain what. So I said at the beginning we're going to do a crossover episode. So this is part 1.
You did, yeah.
Which is, so part 1 is 7 million bikes, so we're interviewing in my arena,
Sure.
which is my front room. And then do you want to explain about part 2 then?
Well, part 2, we want to go through our standard set podcast with you, which is highly improvised. We do have a group of questions that we do like to ask, and it'll be an extension of what we're talking about today, really, and also a thank you for having us on, and we get to have you on and do a couple of things we like to do with our guests. So
I guess we'll switch roles, right? So right now, I was going to ask you earlier, so right now I would say that you're the interviewees. Have you found this different to doing your own podcast?
Yep.
Sure, this is a joy and a pleasure. I got pins and needles right when you were introducing us. I was like, oh, wait, this is the first time this is happening, and it was a cool feeling. So, I love attention.
It's very meta right now. We're on a podcast.
Yeah, we're
with
talking about
podcasters talking about podcasts. Like it's
also a biological phenomenon because she has been so quiet.
But what's different is, and I think what will be different for listeners of each show is, I'm being interviewed as a podcaster, but also what am I doing here? Because that's the content you like to look for, and this is the first time I've ever been interviewed as a podcaster, so this is an exclusive.
Cool. Well, I was going to ask because I didn't get this part. What was your background in Chicago or that suburb of Chicago that you did before?
So before Vietnam, and what got me into Vietnam was my barbecue and my brewing. I was brought over here to make beer and barbecue for Vietnamese. That was it. How I got to that point in Chicago was first job was a pizza kitchen. 15 years old, worked there just 2.5 years. It seems like a lifetime because it's such good memories. Super busy pizza kitchen. I mean, you clocked in at 5 p.m. and you threw down your handful of raw Italian sausage at 12:30 at night, and it feels like the whole thing was a blur and flew by in a minute. And I loved it. I didn't stop working pizza kitchens. I wanted to have my own pizza restaurant. By the time I was 21, my dad talked about taking a loan out on his house to help me get into my first restaurant, and I was terrified of it. I was like, I'll ruin my dad's life if I don't succeed. So it was just too much money. I couldn't get in the door. So when I was about 22 or 23 years old, I got a job at a Chevy dealership. Initially, it was driving a parts truck, and then eventually made it into the parts department, online sales, and the web was brand new, and I knew a little more than everyone else in that parts department. But I carved out a cool job. I was selling parts on eBay and setting up an eBay store I don't know. It was a great 9-to-5 job. I liked working with the guys, but it didn't quite pay all the bills. I was at a very low middle class level, but I started making frozen pizzas. Me and my cousin teamed up. We had shrink wrap machines, and we'd make sometimes over 200-300 pizzas a month and selling them at $8 a piece. My middle class income kind of jumped up to the comfortable level. I had my own house. I had my own car and paid my bills on time. Could barely afford to save up enough money to take a trip to Vietnam, and that's where it led. And, all those years of cooking, the passion never died. I had 3 Weber grills, a big Texas smoker in my backyard, and I would every weekend, if I wasn't getting paid to do a party or an event of some kind, I would still be in my backyard lighting it, trying new things. A lot of times I'd do it, I'd barely even eat it. I'd make up beef ribs and this, and this, and then on Monday I'd come into work and be like, here Bob, here guys, try this. What's that? Oh, this is a beef rib. This is with this kind of sauce, and it just the passion was there. And I had a lot of people telling me, what are you working at a car dealership for? Why aren't you doing this? I'm like, I haven't really had the opportunity. So that was the pre-lead up. When someone asked me, I had to take it seriously because it was the first opportunity. Like, I could really have my own restaurant. Holy crap, And
Was here?
Yeah, the opportunity for me, the American dream was possible in Vietnam. So, and yeah, 9 restaurants strong and a beer truck. Even after I arrived, the restaurant did well right away. I didn't really think it through. I'm like, I told myself when I was coming over, I'm like, I asked myself, what happens if I don't do this? And, I'm like, if I do it, if it fails, I can always do what I'm doing right now. I didn't hate my life. I just had the opportunity. And I go, but if I don't do it, nothing happens. And I'll never know. And I'm like, that's a no-brainer. And it was that was the thought process. But even after the restaurant was open, I'd wake up, I got to go to the restaurant at 10 o'clock and open up. We open at 4. We back then I wasn't the one opening the restaurant. We only had like 15 employees. Now we've got close to 400. I remember 5 months after I was here and the restaurant was busy and I was making money. I was paying myself and I loved the life here, but I'd still wake up and say, why am I here? What did I do? Where's my house? Where's my life? And it was just kind of dawning on me that, like, this is it. And I'm married to a Vietnamese woman, and I have a Vietnamese family here now. And half of my life will always be in Vietnam. I mean, there's no exit plan. There's just, I guess, what's next.
My wife and I still do it on almost a weekly, maybe even daily basis. We're like, we live in Vietnam. Like, well, what? How do we like? We have a dog. Like, what's going on? Like, I guess maybe similar to your family. Like, we have a family here, so. Yeah,
I always think of that exact point when I listen. What's the Talking Heads song? Yeah, once in a lifetime, it's that exact realization. Like, this is really my life,
Yeah, same as it ever was.
Yeah.
Same as it ever was.
Oh, it's that song. I know that one. Yeah.
That song, to me, when I hear those lyrics, it's just telling that story. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah. This is the last set of questions for season 1. I'm thinking of changing them for season 2. We've had 10 sets of answers. So if anyone has any thoughts on new questions I can ask people, or if you guys do, let me know for season 2. But season 1, we'll do it quick as you can. Top 3 Vietnamese foods, Josh.
Bún thịt nướng, bún chả, and mi Quảng.
Mine would be pretty similar, yeah.
There's one that I really, really like that is very specific, and that's that Tung Hung noodle place on Tran Hung Dao. That's a Vung Tao noodle. It's a pork rib broth, and you choose between pork balls, dumplings, and shrimp. I always get the dumpling is like the greasy bun cha pork inside it, and the shrimp, and you can get that bowl of noodles only at that place. So, it's their own unique soup. That's one of my favorites. I love Cao Lao. If you've ever been to Hoi An, that's my all-time favorite noodle dish in Vietnam. And then I'm a big fan of Bo Co, because to me it's home comfort food like beef stew, but it's the Vietnam version. It has that anise and all those unique spices to it. So
have you heard us talk about this? This has come up actually a couple of times on the podcast in the past, because I think it was with Misha's episode, because I was talking to Misha and saying how I'd had bok choy for breakfast that day, and I was like, I just had beef stew for breakfast. Like, if you were back home, that would just seem so surreal, right?
My first breakfast in Vietnam was fish cake. I was at 6 a.m. before going on a photo shoot with my friend Jake in Da Nang. That wasn't my all-time favorite, because I didn't really care for breakfast that much, but I did have it for breakfast that day. And Jake was telling me this is a very common Vietnamese breakfast. It was just fish cake. They mash the fish up and cut into little strips, and I'm eating. What am I eating? The fish cake. Okay. It tasted just fine, but it was an odd breakfast.
Well, this is the last episode I had with we talked about bok choy again.
That was 3. Okay.
And it's one of my favorites.
I could name a few more, but
we could go on all day, couldn't we? Right. So, Josh, now we're going to eliminate beer craft from this question. What's your favorite beer and favorite bar?
Favorite beer? I've thought long about this. I'm moody, so I changed that, but my go-to at the moment is East West's Far East IPA. Yeah.
And your favorite bar?
That'd be Fat Shaggy's.
Nice. All right, we'll give you. You can tell us your favorite beer, craft beer, since you make it, and then your favorite non-beer craft beer.
They're like my kids.
Everyone's got a favorite kid. I don't know.
Don't let the other kids know.
Yeah.
This is a really tough one, but I would have to say, maybe because it's one of the beers I'm most proud of too, and it was the first craft beer, is our Dun Chok Tao Pale Ale. It's not the one I drink the most, because it's a little higher in alcohol, but that's where it all started. And actually, that recipe was one of the first pale ales I ever made in homebrewing 18 years ago. That was the first all grain beer that I had ever made, was that recipe. And I liked it so much that all the different styles I learned how to brew, I never changed it. I just love how that turned out with that grain bill and that hop content. And yeah, so
favorite non-beer craft beer and favorite non-beer craft bar.
Okay. Non-beer craft bar. Oh, that's Quan. No. No. God. You know what? As a favor to all of the craft beer guys out there, because I love all their establishments, I'll just say Fat Shaggy's, because that's my hometown dive bar in District 2, and it's probably where I spend more time at that bar than any. So a shout out to Paul and Tom with Fat Shaggy's.
And then, so your favorite non-beer craft beer can be any beer, doesn't have to be a craft beer. Favorite beer?
No, any of my favorite beers, it's gonna be a craft beer. I could say lately the pale ale from East West is a very good one. It very much reminds me of just like a good old Sierra Nevada. It's a nice, hoppy, easy drinking pale ale. So yeah, I forget what the nickname of that one is.
Far East, right? You said it?
No, Far East is
Far
the
East is
IPA.
Yeah, that's the turquoise label, darker.
Yeah, the green labeled
Oh,
East West one. Their pale ale is really nice.
Can't remember.
Is it just called pale ale? I don't think it has a name.
They-
Or does it have a name?
I can't remember it now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Where's your favourite daytime place to drink?
Coffee.
You can choose the drink.
I really enjoy Agnes Cafe. Although recently I haven't been there recently, but Agnes Cafe or really any place downtown with plastic stools and street side access. I'm a people watcher. So
Well, and I would say, and this is brand new for me, but I'm absolutely telling you, it's my honest opinion. I really enjoy wherever our new beer truck is parked in the daytime. We did our first ever launch. I felt like I was in the parking lot of a Grateful Dead show, standing around with people drinking next to a truck. It's just a cool feeling, and Vietnam hasn't had that. And I know it's not fair because it's my own business, but I'm being very honest.
That's cool.
It's a lot of fun. Last night we were sitting outside on the tables in a construction site where we had the truck parked, and I really enjoy it.
No, I think it's a fair enough answer. And so, you've had this question before. Why do you choose to stay in Saigon? Why not go back home? You don't, that's what the reason for this question is. We're expats, so we can do that, right? Maybe not you. You got family now, but Josh, why do you stay?
the community, and I honestly feel I love my family back home, and I feel that I've gained family out here. I have some very close, wonderful friends, and keep meeting new people all the time, like yourself, and it's the community.
Yeah, the reason why I stay, it's the more time that goes by and the more I guess accomplish, and my wife and I have family here now. It just seems like the more I get, the more I want, of Vietnam in general. I realized that over the last year or two that I'm like, some part of my life is going to be in Vietnam, even if I make it to 70 years old, I'm going to be splitting time between here and home, back in Chicago.
Cool. What one thing would you change about Saigon?
Similar to like Manhattan, big cities, I would restrict car access to like District 1. And I respect and I totally understand when Vietnamese want to join their vision of the rest of the world and have a car and get to show that off. I get that. I'm not that type of person myself, but I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. But currently the infrastructure doesn't really support that. I do like motorbikes, and I think that if they would just reduce the certain areas and make certain streets one way, I would just adjust traffic.
I could agree with improve the traffic. That's probably one of the most dangerous things. I was actually in a not too minor because I broke 6 bones, but in February, and it was just daytime. It wasn't because I have overserved myself and caused problems years back, but that was actually, I was at work. I was driving over to one of our restaurants, and a lady just turned right in front of me with no helmet on, and I was forced to choose between running her over or ditching the bike, and then ditching the bike is what I did, and just broke some ribs. But yeah, I'd agree with Josh. That is probably the biggest concern, and when people are visiting this country, it's always like, you get used to it, but it is a little out of control.
So Mark, what's the most misunderstood thing about Saigon?
Well, for me, how it occurs is a lot of my family back home, they don't understand, like my mom in particular, she's like, do they have phones? She'll ask, like, I'm like, Mom, there's 10 million people in this city. They have high rises. They do? But even like, the guys I work with, they're asking these really, I'm like, yes, they have internet. Yes, we have smartphones. Yes, we have internet. I think what's misunderstood is the Vietnamese have a lot of freedoms And expats working here have a lot of freedoms that they don't have back home. And I think that's very much true. I can't vote for who's in power, and it's a one-party system, and you got to accept what they say. But your personal freedoms, you actually have more of them here. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that with never coming here, or experiencing it.
And Josh?
I completely agree. I think that there's a contrast between what a lot of people especially particularly in America, I think because of the American War, or what we would call the Vietnam War. There's this general misconception with how Vietnamese view America. I think even today, even though relations have been normalized for more than 2 decades at this point. I fully agree with Mark.
And then quick answer, favourite place to get out of town?
I guess I'll say Sapa. I just went there for the first time, and I wasn't able, it was just business. But what I saw, I'm going to take my wife there next time I get out of town, and it is just absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful up there. Josh?
I really enjoyed Phu Quoc.
Yeah.
The island. Just being a little part of that slice of life.
Yeah.
So final question. What advice, Josh, first of all, would you give to somebody who's thinking of taking that leap and coming to move in Saigon? Which, from our conversation and others, it feels like nobody really makes that decision to come and live here. People come to visit, or they come for a month or two, and then suddenly it becomes their life. But if someone's thinking of living in Saigon, what advice would you give them?
If you're a youngin', say under 30, just do it. Come out for a year. Try it out. If you're someone over 30, do it. Come for a year, try it out. I think that's our beer.
Josh getting a phone call right as we're about to finish, and Mark has to leave. Our beers have arrived. Mark, you're going to finish off the interview. What one piece of advice would you give to somebody who's thinking of moving here?
My advice would be thinking of moving here, right? Relocating?
Yep.
If you have any opportunity to do something here, jump on it, because I think growing up as an American, a lot of times people say when opportunity knocks, it's always you jump on it, but then there's always buyer beware. What are they really selling me? And you have that uncertainty. I had it about coming out here and opening a restaurant. A lot of the things we said in this interview, there is a lot of opportunity here. So if you have an opportunity to come to Asia and you're thinking about it, just ask yourself, what happens if I don't do it? And then to me, when I said nothing happens if I don't do this, it gave me the courage and the strength to get out there and give it a try. So,
that's a great piece of advice. I've liked hearing the answers to these questions, and because some of the wisdom that has come out has been really good, and I think that's one of the best ones is what happens if you don't do it?
Nothing happens.
Yeah.
You want nothing to keep happening? Then just go on doing that.
Yep.
And if you're okay with nothing happening and you like the situation you're in, then you can live with that answer too.
So we're going to wrap up. This is, as I said, a crossover episode between 7 Million Bikes and Sexy Meat Talk. So part 2 will be the three of us again, but this time I think we're going to be interviewing at Beercraft, right? And I'll be on the other end, which will be strange for me. I guess I'm going to be the interviewee.
And we're going to ask you all about your perception of the food and beverage industry and what is sexy meat.
I'm looking forward to it. So I think to wrap up, this is the end of season 1. I realised something just recently was I think the sign of a good interview or even a good podcast episode is always wanting more, and I found in this episode, this interview included, I could talk for longer, we could talk for more, and I think everyone I've interviewed up throughout it, and at the end I'm like, I wish I'd asked them that, or I wish we talked more about this. Maybe we should do another episode and I can re-ask them all these questions. So for me, I think that's the sign of a good podcast, I guess, and a good interview is that you want more from it. So I hope that the listeners get that feeling as well. And I hope you've enjoyed this interview, this podcast, and the whole season. And so, guys, thank you so much. Just quickly before we finish, then tell me what's next for you guys. What's happening?
Well, we'll definitely be doing an episode with you in the future, hopefully very soon. And our next episode coming up will be with Dave Byrne, who's a brewer.
David Byrne is brewed all over the world. Well, in Asia and in the United States. And it was a really fun interview. So
He's a fantastic guy.
That's next for us.
And then for Beer Craft, what's on the horizon? So the 9th restaurant is opening.
Yeah. So like I said, we'll be announcing very soon the exact location, and yeah, we're excited about the new Beer Craft coming. I think in our company, Kwan Udud, owns both Beer Craft and Kwan Udud. We have 4 new locations by the end of the year planned. So,
wow, awesome!
Let's hope we hit it.
So listen in for part 2. Now, where can people find, if people are listening on this podcast, where can they find Sexy Meat Talks?
Well, we're on Podbean, which is an app, or also a website which you can download from, and we're going to be on iTunes hopefully within a day or two, and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. And
also our Facebook page, we post bi-weekly episodes every other week.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so look out for part 2 there. Check it out, guys. We'll wrap it up. Thank you very much. It's been awesome. I'm looking forward to part 2 coming onto your turf.
Sounds good.
It's going to be fun.
Hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, ớt xào đây.
Well, thank you for listening to the final episode of Season 1, 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I know that I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to all of our guests. And as I mentioned just at the end of that episode, every episode I've always wanted to know and ask more. And so maybe in the future we'll have some guests back on. But for now, I'm going to take a small break. Thinking of guests for Season 2, I'm already getting lots and lots of requests. I've been introduced to some really interesting people. So right now I'm just trying to figure out what Season 2 is going to look like and when I'm going to start. But that should be the beginning of September, would be the first episode of Season 2. In the meantime, listen to any episodes that you haven't had a chance to yet. Please send me any feedback. I do love hearing from people. That's been one of the most rewarding things. You can get me on Facebook or 7millionbikes@gmail.com. As always, a massive thank you to Lewis Wright for composing the theme music. I really don't think this podcast would be listened to as much if it wasn't for him. So thank you, Lewis. Thank you to Nguyen for helping me design the cover art. That just looks amazing on all the platforms, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. You can get us on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all over the internet. So it's been fantastic to see as well. The podcast has been listened to all over the world, nearly every continent. Regular listeners, people giving feedback. It's actually completely surpassed my expectations, and my expectations were not very high at all. And so it's really been amazing to see that people are enjoying it, sharing it, talking about it. And as somebody who does comedy and you see an instant reaction to what you're saying, it's very strange to sit and record something and then put it out and then you've no idea what people are thinking. So when people do give feedback, it does mean a lot. It does help me understand how it's all going. So it's great to hear when people do get in touch that they are listening, that they do enjoy it. And if anyone's got any feedback, positive or negative, then please let me know. As I said, I'd love to hear from you. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And now, don't forget, go to Sexy Meat Talks on Podbean and you'll get part 2 of this episode where I will be interviewed by Josh and Mark. And so I hope you enjoy that episode and I'll see you on Sexy Meat Talks.
Hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, ớt xào đây. Ớt xào đây.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease, and I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.